the show. It's time for Candid Conversation. Conversation with Lady T and JT. It's time for Candid Conversation. Conversation with Lady T and JT. Check out the show.
Well, good evening and welcome to another Candid Conversation. I'm your girl, Lady T, and of course, I am not alone. We have Lady JT in the house and our beautiful special guest, Tameka Douglas. Woo, 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 woo,
Hello,
woo.
so glad to be here.
Yes. How are you ladies doing?
I am doing well. It's a beautiful day. I'm in the land of the living, so I'm glad about it. I'm thankful. I'm doing well today. I hope you ladies are.
Yes, JT.
Yes, I am doing fantastic. Listen, I will tell you, there's been a lot of life going on, and we've seen that play out in our real lives. We've seen it play out on the news. But I'll tell you, it is nothing like being in the land of the living, heavy on the living,
Come
and being
on.
free. Hashtag no P. Diddy.
That part. Yes.
Yes.
And we're just excited to be here on Oak 93.5 FM in Raleigh, North Carolina, or maybe you're joining us on Facebook. However, you are joining us, you have connected on a great day. We are back, we're excited, and we're ready for a candid conversation. So go ahead and like, comment, and share. Let us know you're there. Hey, Janelle. Hey, girl. Hey. Our girl Janelle is always there, faithful and
Yes.
on time. She beat us here sometimes, Jay.
That
But listen,
part.
y'all.
And listen, good evening, Nanette. Girl, it is good to see you on Candid Conversations this
Yes.
evening. Listen, we have got a fantastic show lined up today with Tameka Douglas. Listen, many of you follow her on Momentum Monday. She is no stranger to her impactful impartations on Facebook during that insightful and inspiring podcast every other Monday on Facebook. But what some people don't know about Tameka is that she is a social worker and an advocate for adult services. And so she's got some information that she's going to be bringing us today that many of us are contending with as we are dealing with the conversation and as we've been talking about the conversation about how we transition with our aging community.
Yes, and she doesn't need she does not need a bio read, but as many of you know, she is a woman who wears plenty and many of hats. So we knew that when we decided to have this very needed conversation, we knew who to call. We had her on speed dial, did we not, JT?
And did.
We're excited. Janet, thanks again for joining in. JT is in a different area today, so you might not get all of the laughter and the you might, I don't know. But Tameka, welcome to Candid Conversation and Oak 93.5. You're no stranger, but welcome back, sis.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here. I enjoy the show each and every week. I tell you, the conversations are great. They're transparent, they're candid, and it's information we need to hear. So I am a fan of Candid Conversations, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And we're fans of Momentum Monday. If you
Yes.
don't know, first and third Monday every month, she is here dropping jewels, gems. I'm telling you, encouraging you week in and week out. So we are fans as well, and we will definitely share on our in comment section. So for those who may not know about Momentum Monday, it is a blessing each and every
Yes.
week. I'm telling you. And I'm not just plugging it because I know this lady. I'm telling you what's good. I'm not gonna. I'm telling you. But Tameka and Janet, we both know we have our audience is just it varies from young to old. We know that, but we do also know that there are a lot of ladies that tune in every week who are about our age, in our age groups, 40s, 50s, 60s, who may be dealing with aging parents, or somebody maybe listening who may be aging themselves and just don't know which way to go, what to do when it comes to funds, when it comes to where am I going next? So how, you know what I'm saying? And I have the privilege, I can say, to see a lot of this every day. I see a lot of elderly people and children trying to figure out what's next for mom and dad. Well, Tameka, that's why we got you here, sis. Share with us. Can you, first of all, tell us what you can tell us a little bit what you do, but mainly we want to know how when we have an aging parent at home and they don't necessarily have all this thousands and thousands of dollars that's needed to survive. Can you help us out?
Absolutely. First and foremost, as aforementioned, I am in the field of social work. I've been in it for many years now. And the good thing about it is that it's something I was always passionate about. As a little girl, believe it or not, I knew I would be in human services. I always wanted to be a social worker. It's something I'm very passionate about. And it's a field that I'm blessed to be in, very thankful for it. I currently serve the adult population and the area, as you know, there are many areas of social work. And so the area that I am in is the area where we are legal guardians for adults who have been adjudicated incompetent by the clerk of court. So we make decisions as it relates to every area of their lives. We make decisions as it relates to their health care, as it relates to where they live, as it relates to what is best for them in terms of placement. Some of the individuals that we serve live independently. Some of them are in facilities. We have to make some decisions at times to take them out of the home and place them in a facility. So it's a huge job. It's a grand responsibility. I have to take an oath in the clerk of courts as it relates to what I do, and make sure that I am doing things as in accordance to the general statute in the area in which I serve. So in signing my name to those legal documents, I take it very seriously. I take those individuals that I serve very seriously, and I take my mandate to report very seriously, whether or not it's a child or an adult. So that's just a little bit about what I do. I'm grateful for this show today because we all find ourselves at some point in life being in the situation where we're caring for aging parents, or sometimes in some cases, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a person that is aging. We find individuals who find themselves even as young adults being in situations where they have a life change. It could be a situation where they have a traumatic brain injury, inevitably have a stroke, different things like that. So we know that we have various vicissitudes in life, and so we have to sometimes make decisions in an abrupt manner, and then there are times when we can have the opportunity to think about the decisions. And so I'm hoping what we glean from this show today is a conversation that takes place with those who are in our lives, with our parents who may be aging, or with even your children, about your life. What does life look like for me as I age? Will you take care of me, or will someone else take care of me? What happens to my estates? Where happens to my assets when something happens? So I'm glad that we're having this conversation today. And I just kind of want to start out talking a little bit about the differences in what care looks like. We have, of course, skilled nursing facilities. Some people find themselves there and they don't. Sometimes it's a hospitalization wherein a person is in the hospital and they thought they were going to be able to go back home. And inevitably, they end up needing additional care. So they transition from the hospital setting, leaving their home behind, and in a skilled nursing facility. So I want to a little bit about the differences in care as it relates to skilled nursing versus assisted living,
Yes.
versus family care home settings, which are your smaller group home type settings. At any rate, I believe that this is something that we'll think about once we leave this conversation on today. So your skilled nursing facilities, what does that look like? That is your nursing home type settings where individuals are hospitalized perhaps, and they end up needing more of a heavier care. They need that health care piece as it relates to their physical care, or it could be that need in terms of their adult daily living duties, taking care of them as it relates to their personal care. So in some cases, we find, again, individuals who may be at home and they may get sick, or they may have issues where they become weak and they need hospitalization. And so from there's a team that is looking at them where they are. Is this their new baseline? Is this individual going to be able to go home and care for themselves? And so then you're left with the decision, mom or auntie or our cousin, what are we going to do? Is someone going to be able to take care for you in your home, or are you going to need that skilled nursing level of care? Now, there are some cases where people get a little bit confused. Well, what is the assisted living level of care versus skilled nursing? Well, in your assisted living level of care, the individual is able to do a little bit more for themselves. So wherein in the skilled nursing facility, you have some, not all, who may be bedridden. So they're going to need someone to go in there and provide them that care each day, get them up, make sure that their hygiene is taken taken care of. In some cases, individuals can't feed themselves, so they need a CNA or a personal care aide to go in there and provide them with that assistance that they need each day with feeding. In your assisted living level of care, you're likely able to do that on your own, and wherein you may need somebody to provide you with that supervision and oversight to stand and take a shower, you're going to be expected to do a little bit more on your own in that assisted living level of care, in terms of taking care of your adult daily living tasks. You may have to dress yourself. They may help you find your clothes for the day, but you may need to be able to dress yourself in that assisted living level of care, wherein in that skilled nursing level of care, you're going to have that assistance each day from someone, or I should say you should, because we know that there are different things that are occurring in these different facility settings. So that's a little bit about the differences in the two, skilled nursing versus your assisted living level of care. Any questions there, ladies?
Well, of course, I've got a plethora of questions.
Look, I'm over here taking notes.
I just, again, I, with my personal family dynamic, we just didn't really have um you know a vantage point on the different levels of care as you get older. It's been as I have gotten older that there are all these different options, with skilled nursing, assistant living, and then the independent living, the 55 and up communities. But with any of those different options, as you begin to look into it, the cost just seems, exponential if you're not prepared for that. And I just never really heard of people going into these different living facilities
Right,
as you get older.
right, right.
And you mentioned something that is so very important, and you talked about the cost, because in so many cases people don't think about the cost. And I think that discussion, that's why it's so important that discussion is made early in advance, that we talk to family members about that, because a lot of people, they make a decent salary, they have a decent career, but then when it comes to care needs, it's the cost is enormous. And so in so many cases, people find that they're not able to afford it. They get to a point, whether it is they have children or they don't have children or have someone to care for them, and they get to a point where they do need that extra assistance. So then, of course, we know that we have the in-home aides, people that can go into the homes and help take care of individuals that may have their own home, and they may just need a little bit of assistance in the home. Their gait is unsteady, and so they're afraid to get in the shower. So they just need someone to come in once or twice per week to assist them with getting in the shower, or to provide them with that standby assistance. Well, what does that cost look like? Can you afford it? So I think the conversation has to take place as to, well, are we going to save for this, or are we going to look into some long-term care insurance options that are out there to pay for these services? You have individuals who says, I'm never leaving my home. I'm not going into a facility. I'm not going into a nursing home. I want to stay at home. Well, you have to begin to think about that as you're going through life, and as you're kind of, doing your day-to-day things, you're spending, you have to think about that savings to save for what could happen. And
Yes.
so that you'll know whether or not you'll be able to afford someone to come into the home. Are these independent living facilities that we have out here? We have some beautiful ones right here in our county alone, but the cost is enormous. The amount most can't afford to stay in those places, and wherein they're provided in these semi-independent living facilities, where they're provided just a little bit of oversight. You may have a dining room where they have staff that will provide you with your meals every day. They may have people to assist you with cleaning and things of that nature, but you have to think about the cost. Is it something that I can afford? Is it something that I'm going to be able to pay for? So that's why those conversations are important. That's why saving for times like that is important. And so you made a great point, Janet, in talking about how, a lot of times people don't think about these things and know what's out there and available to them, but you have to make sure that you at least think about it and try to prepare.
And if I might add, well, before I do that, good evening, all of you all who have joined in. We thank you so much for tuning in to Candid Conversations. We see you. Hi, Marceline, all the way down in Florida. Hello, Mother Julia Douglas, and everyone else. And we see you, Sharon Say. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Sharon Say says she has health care comes to her home. But we can talk about that too, because that's not a necessarily free service that she's getting, but it depends on insurances and it depends on what you have, but that's a blessing. Overseer Denisha, God bless you, woman of God. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know you have been busy spreading that gospel, but thank you all, ladies. And we think this is a very good conversation to be here on and listening to on today. To me, you mentioned something now because I was like, man, I'm writing notes. I called my mother. I said, make sure you're on today, sweetheart. And I call your sister and tell her to be on today because you need to hear this conversation. Because typically, there's a certain race of people who think that because I don't know how to put this with nicely, but us as Black people, sometimes we're ill prepared. As the government, as I mentioned earlier, are playing chess, we're still playing checkers. And like we get to a certain age and we have to get services, right? Because we got mom who's aging or, so they want to take houses, y'all. They Medicaid wants houses and they're gonna take your stuff. And we're not trying to beat the law, but there are certain races who are ahead of the game. They are ahead of the game. They typically put, and this is not illegal, but sometimes children's names get put on things so that, when it's time you up there in age, you don't have to worry about it because they don't want to give you hardly anything. Do you hear people sometimes they be like, I'm in the store wishing that I could get a break on food. I don't get but $9 worth of food stamps. Well, you know what? that these things happen. And sometimes we can get older and we don't need these services, but you need to be prepared early. You don't want to wait and then they start taking houses and you leave nothing for your children at all. So I just wanted to say, as a certain race of people, we should definitely pay attention to that and maybe be more proactive and more do our due diligence and making sure things are straight in the future. We all know that we're not here forever. So even at our age, 40s and 50s, we need to not, we talk that talk, but we should have our stuff in order as well. Living wills, know where your insurance policy is.
Yeah.
So anybody know where it is? So it's just things like that. But the money, in independent living and assisted living, what type, like, do they have to have Medicaid to get into an assisted living? Is there different types of Medicaid that they, you know what I'm saying? Can you speak on that?
Yes, and that is a good segue into the point I wanted to make when we talked a little bit about the skilled nursing facility. Now, when you think about the cost for that, most people don't have that money laying around to pay the daily rate for these skilled nursing facilities, which varies, or the amount that people pay per month. And so many people are dependent upon Medicaid, long-term care Medicaid. Well, the thing about it, because and you mentioned about houses and assets and things like that, Medicaid, and a lot of people don't know this, but it's so imperative that we know that Medicaid has a 60-month look back period, or that's 5 years, right? Where they look back at assets and transfers and things like that. And so when it comes to your care, first of all, have the conversation with your children, with your spouse, and it may not even be a child or a spouse. It may be a godmother whom you're close to, and perhaps you handle her affairs. Talk to her. If something were to happen, would you want to be in a skilled nursing facility, or do you want to have the care provided in your home? And so that's why that conversation is great to take place, because when people have assets and properties and things like that, just know that when you go to apply for Medicaid, there is a reserve limit that they take a look at of $2,000. That's not a lot of money when it comes to houses and cars and things of that nature. So what comes up a lot of times is that people will say, well, I'm not going to give my house away, or I'm not going to sell my house. I'm just going to let my child take it. Well, when you try to do it within that short period of time that a lot of times we have in many cases, the Medicaid looks back on that. And so you have to think in advance. If you know you have property in your name, and if you know you're aging, think about transferring that over into your child's name well in advance. And a lot of people who know about this, they go ahead and do it. And it doesn't mean that you're just giving your stuff away, or that somebody's going to put you out of your house. Right. It doesn't mean that. But what it means is that you're preparing for, if in fact you do have to go into a facility setting, if you're that type that says, I don't want to be a burden on anybody, just let me go somewhere. I talked to a lady the other day, and she said that, when her mom had aged, she said, listen, I don't want you all to have to worry about me. I want you to live your life, continue your career. So you can put me in a skilled nursing facility. I just need y'all to come check on me every day. So
that part.
What she did was her mom had properties and things of that nature. So she transferred their assets into their name years in advance, because again, right now, unless something changes, there's only a 5-year look back period. But in many cases, most people can't beat that because they haven't done it prior to that 5 years. But Medicaid is going to look back in that 5-year time frame at those assets and things of that nature. Now, they will allow a property, for instance, but it's going to be looked at like this. Say, for instance, you do need the Medicaid and you're able to finagle that, and then they say, okay, well, we're gonna allow this resource. Well, then the way the state looks at it is, how are you able to, if you're going in the facility, how are you going to be able to keep up the taxes on this property? Who's going to handle the upkeep of this property? And so, wherein we look at it like, I worked hard, I paid my house off, and worked all those years. They're looking at it like, okay, but somebody has to take care of you. So that money for that house sale, then it needs to go towards your care. And that's why, when your income that you make, right, whether it is through Social Security or however, or your retirement and all of that, when it goes to the facility, that is to provide you for care. That's paying for your care, that's paying for your food, that is paying for you to be able to lay your head down somewhere at nighttime. So I know it looks like, well, all of my money, they take all of my money and I only get to keep $70 now, because that's the amount for in the skilled nursing facility setting. I only get to keep $70 and they take all of my money. Well, that's what's taking care of your care. So again, back to the point at hand, that look back period does take place. And so we have to prepare and really think about what the future may hold and what it is that you want to, plan for in your future, whether that is skilled nursing or whether that is being cared for in your home. Either way is going to cost, whether or not you're bringing someone into the home to help take care of you, or whether or not you're in a setting where they're providing you with 24-hour care and supervision.
I think that, as we are learning about planning for our future, because oftentimes people are like, you need to be thinking about retirement, and the goal used to be, if I can retire at 62 and get my debts paid off and get my 401k and my pension and my assets to a place where I can retire, I'm checking a box. I hold that part of retirement planning also needs to be this conversation as well about trust. And I think it was Marcy who asked the question, what about a trust? Is that safe? Yes. Attorneys will tell you that if you transfer your assets to a trust, now granted, it's still applicable to that look back period, but if you transfer your assets to a trust, then your assets do remain safe. But, I hold that part of planning for your future retirement needs to be having conversations such as this as well. But, Tanisha said something earlier. She said, it doesn't always happen, though we're talking about our aging population. Things happen with middle-aged people too, with strokes and heart attacks, and
Yes.
life comes quick, and we've got to make decisions really quickly. So, to your earlier comments, Mika, it's important that we're planning and making sure that we have our business in order with, POAs and wills and things like that, so that people know people know what we want our wishes to be and how we need to get those things carried out.
Exactly.
Absolutely, JT, and you made a great point in terms of POA, and that's something I wanted to talk a
Yes.
little bit about today, was the POA versus the guardian of person, because there is a difference. Typically, with the POA is a voluntarily appointed person. Like, for instance, Lady T or Lady J, you may say, I'm not able to make decisions anymore, so I would like your cousin or an aunt or a child that is an adult to make those decisions for you. But the guardian, that is someone that is going to be accorded or appointed by the courts. Now, both the weight is about the same in terms of the decisions, but that is the distinct difference, in that the power of attorney is someone that is a voluntary person, that you may say to someone, listen, if something were to happen, I'm not able to make sound decisions in my own best interest, I would like for you to be my power of attorney. The clerk of court is going to be someone that would appoint that guardian of person, and that is by court order. And so again, those are the differences in the two of those. The power of attorney can make those decisions as it relates to the person's. And we'll also talk a little bit about the guardians of estates, where it relates to finances and things of that nature. But that power of attorney is able to make those healthcare decisions, and then the guardian of person is able to do the same as well, up until the person's no longer here or the person passes away.
Oh, that's great, Tameka. Based on what you just said, as far as the power of attorney, I've been told that there may be another type of power of attorney. Like, just say if the person's sickly and then they just need help, they just need someone. I don't want you to necessarily be involved with this, but I just need you to make my health decisions. that's a difference, right?
It is, and typically the attorney, because when you get your power of attorney, you're going to you typically work with an attorney, and they can make those distinct differences in the order, based on what that person wants you to make decisions about. Because again, they may say, okay, well, I want to have a guardian of estate who makes my financial planning. I want that individual to take care of what takes place financially and to handle my financial matters. And so the court appointed, the attorney would typically handle that order based on how it is written up.
So, Tamika, we had a question. Um, Denisha writes, does a POA expire when a person expires?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, that's you don't no longer need that, but it is good for us again to have a POA in place as we age as well. That's not necessarily giving up all your rights. You want somebody you can trust that you know going to make best decisions, for your lifestyle, for the things that you're going to need. So it is important to know that you can trust this person that you have over as your POA. If someone, Tamika, girl, we just loading you up with questions, but I'm seeing in the comments that people just didn't know. And that's why it's been so heavy on me to have this conversation because I'm like, so many people don't know. And just being owning a home care agency, I'm one of those people. I just didn't know. And I've learned so much over these last 5 years about having your estate, will or estate. Having an estate, have a trust, that right there I didn't know about. That Marcy brought up a good point about a trust. Denisha is asking a will or estate, which is best? Okay, so I don't know. I can't answer that. What's a will or an estate?
And also, another point I wanted to make, because we do encounter this sometimes as well, where
Hold on,
people are
Nisha.
like, they thought they were still the power of attorney. That power of attorney can be revoked at any time while the person is still competent. Because
Yes.
again, sometimes people make the decision and they're still competent, and they may decide, listen, but I want this person to handle things
Yeah.
for me. I want my children, I want my in-laws to handle things for me while I'm alive, for instance. But that can be revoked at any time, wherein the guardian of person, that is only to be revoked and can be revoked by the clerk of court.
Wow. Okay.
I'm gonna give my opinion on Denisha's question: a will or a estate, which one is best? I think that you need to have a will to make sure that your wishes are carried out, so that you have a legally binding document that states, who who should get access to what. If you are blessed to have enough things to put into an estate, I think that also takes the guesswork out of things also, because when people expire, sometimes that brings out the absolute worst in certain families because they're fighting over material
Yes.
things and forgetting that, hey, we didn't work for any of this. These are gifts that were given to us because that person wanted to make sure that they left us something.
That's
That's a great point,
a great
JT, and
point.
I concur with that. And as it relates to the wills, since Denisha brought that up, I think it's important to note that living wills are so essential, because I know a lot of times we think about what's left after I'm gone. That living will, if you can talk about that, in fact, I don't care if you're in your 30s, if you can talk about what your desires are, because again, I
Yes.
know we're focusing on older adult or aging adults, but oh my goodness, in my world, I see people at 20, 30 that have strokes and things of that nature. So most people think that that's just something that happens to an aging person. It's not. So if in fact that occurs in your life, you have a stroke and you lose all your bodily functions, you lose the ability to eat. Do you want to be placed on a feeding tube? Or do you want to be intubated? If so, when do we extubate? Do you want us to leave you on the ventilator for 5 days? Or do you want to say, okay, just to keep my family at peace, we're just going to do 3 days. If I'm failing to thrive, then extubate me. So I think those conversations make life so much easier on family when you have those living wills in place. And if it's a person that you may not need Medicaid, for instance, so you have your assets. Okay, while I'm alive, who's going to handle my account information? Who's going to handle the financial matters? So that living will is just as essential as that. The will where you discuss what's left and who is left for and all of that. Think about the living will as well and what you want to see happen, because it just takes the guesswork out. When families are already struggling with what's going on with you medically, or psychiatrically for that matter, it takes the guesswork out of, well, what would they have wanted done. So think about
Right.
the living wills as well.
I agree. I agree. Jay, can you see the question?
Yeah,
Julia,
it
okay.
says here, Miss Julia Douglas writes, we also need to let a POA, power of attorney, know about when resuscitation, know about resuscitation, so there won't be a big problem near the end.
Yeah, that's what Tamika was just saying. You want to have that written down. You want to know, so there won't be any questions asked. And some people, I had someone today just make a decision. She know before she wanted to be, she did want to be resuscitated. Just today, she's chosen to have a DNR, do not resuscitate, period. So, if so you have these decisions. These are real life decisions that we have to make. I can see Sharon said, I was in the hospital for 6 months. Wow, see, and Chara's not, and she's not what we consider an old person. So to have your business in order, even in your 40s and your 50s and 30s, like Tamika said earlier, it really makes a difference. And I assure you that we could do better, even I, as far as having those things in order. So let today be the first day of you
Yeah.
making things right.
Yeah.
And I'll
And it's
add
an
that
easy
it's not expensive to do. I mean, you
Right.
can get a will, you can have it notarized, and it will serve as a legal document. Going to an attorney is best, but if that is not in your budget, they've got plenty of apps like LegalZoom that can put something together for you that will stand up, you know, if it is needed at a later time.
That was my question. I didn't know if I could pose it here because I'm like, I don't know if you know that, but it is a legal document. Even if you go online, how we see all these, you can write a will or get a will done or it pop up. You can do that as long as it has to be notarized.
right.
Yeah.
That
Right.
makes it legal. See,
Hmm.
that's it. That could be done today.
Yes, getting it, a notary to notarize it for
Yes.
you. Because again, there are so many ways. We do have our attorneys that handle things like that, but we know that that is for cost, and it's not just a little cost. So there are
Yeah.
ways to kind of navigate through that and have it, have people look over it for you, and then have a notary look over it and get it signed and hold on to that type stuff because it's so important. And again, it just takes the guesswork out of so many things and makes life easier for those who have to make those tough decisions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they really are. So because what if you have an elderly person and they're elderly and they're unable to stay home alone. They need that dad is 80, 90 years old, but he has dementia and he just can't stay at home, but he doesn't want to leave his home. I built this. You can't, how would you think the best way to handle that would be? Because I know there are options out there that, okay, we'll keep dad at home, but what are we going to do to make that happen? What does that look like? Can you speak on that?
Yeah, it takes work and coming together as loved ones, and whether that is family, close friends, and looking at how everyone can kind of partner and make we know that teamwork makes the dream work. So if you're able to do it and you can kind of get together as a group and figure out how you can get on a schedule, when you're going to check on dad, who's going to make sure he eats, who's going to make sure he doesn't turn the stove on, and who's going to make sure that he's safe in the home, because that is so important. Because when you get outside of that, then you get into another scope of, is this person being neglected? Is this an adult protective services issue? So, and you don't want those things to come into play. And also things that can happen that puts the person in danger of
Right.
themselves. Not that they mean to be, but because they're aging, or maybe their cognition is limited, or as they get older, there's some things that they forgot to
Yeah.
leave the stove on, left the water running, and things of that nature. So in situations like that, it can be done. People in many
Yeah.
cases are able to successfully bring someone home, but in most cases that can be quite difficult, depending on a person's work schedule, life in general. When you
Yeah.
have other responsibilities, it's not always the most feasible thing to do, but it can be done.
And in those situations, I'm sorry, JT, because I just want to make this point. There are agencies that you can also hire to come in to sit with these people, with your parents, your elderly person, right? So that's a different option, ladies and gentlemen. If you have agencies that can come in, they cost too, but you can. There are options. You know what I'm saying? They may not. You have to deal with, I guess, per family, per issue. But yeah, I get that. That's awesome.
Yes.
Marcy said, "Good point." Yes, ma'am. Very good point. JT.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question. What is adult neglect? I mean, we know what it means with regards to children, but what does adult neglect mean?
Look like,
Neglect.
yeah.
Okay, so and when I mention adult protective services, for instance, what they look at is exploitation, and that could be financial, right? Where you have situations where a person, they're getting their check, but maybe they're leaving money around, or they don't have the cognitive abilities that they once had to count their money, or to make sure that they know where their money is at all times. And so you get people that come in. We've had cases where a person's bank account has been misused by family in some cases, and friends. A neighbor knew that individual's account number, and so they're accessing this account. We've had people who have literally gone broke because of situations like that. And so that is exploitation. That is exploiting a person, an aging person, or a person that may be considered an adult, but cognitively they are unable to make sure that they are managing their money. And so someone comes in, I'll help you. Let me go to the bank for you, or let me pay your bill for you. And they take over that individual's finances or account. And so as it relates to a neglect, JT, what that looks like is a person that is aging, or perhaps they don't have the ability to care for themselves, and you don't make sure that they are eating every day, or they have medical issues that are taking place. They have multiple comorbidities. And so that person's health care is being neglected. They're not getting to their appointments, or a person maybe incontinent of bowel and bladder. And so they're sitting in soiled diapers every day. They don't have the ability to change themselves. So you just leave them in a bed all day, and you decide before everybody goes to sleep that night, you're going to change Johnny. But yet he's been laying in his own, defecation all day long, or his own urine all day long. So that's what neglect looks like, when a person is unable to provide care for themselves, unable to feed themselves, unable to take their medications. And so you're the individual that is responsible for doing that, and it's not being done.
Wow, that's good. And that's why we're having the conversation today about, again, as we're dealing with our aging population, the different levels that are needed, as they progress. I'm going to make an emotional comment, and so I acknowledge that early. I'm being kind of serious. Like, when you think about what the cost is for a skilled nursing facility, we're talking anywhere from 14 upwards to $30,000 a month, depending on the level of that center. Not necessarily the care, but the level of that center. Then you step down to assisted living that is around, on the low end, five to $15,000. The average
Right.
person is not paying that for a mortgage. And if they are, they're living in an estate. And yet there's an expectation. For our senior community, that may or may not have those level of resources to be able to, get that. I think it's just terrible. I just think I think it's horrible.
Yeah.
I agree.
And in so many cases, there are people, who are in these settings, and yes, they are very costly, but the care isn't there. They're paying an enormous amount per month to be there, or Medicaid is paying it, and the care isn't there. So we're just thankful that there are people who oversee things like this. So if you see something, I always say something. There are numbers to call. Say something to that residential care coordinator. Say something to that charge nurse in that facility about the care of that individual. That's why I always tell people, if your loved one does have to go into those kinds of settings, don't just leave them there. You've got to go in there and lay eyes, be able to see what's going on.
So
Don't
true.
schedule visits. Go at different times. Where they don't know that you're going to show up. They get a little agitated now, because they're in their mind, how are we going to care for the individual? The family's in the way, the husband's sitting here all day long. We can't even do our jobs and all that. Well, let them complain, but check on your loved one when
Yes.
they're in those settings, and ask questions. Ask questions about, what's going on. Did you get your medicine today? What did you eat for lunch today? Things of that nature is so important to make sure that they are being provided that continuity of care in those settings.
That's so true. So true. There is a question. Can you see it, Jay?
Yeah. So the
It's from Jessica.
question reads,
Okay.
great conversation. Are there resources available for people that can afford the care for family members? Resources that can fill the gap when insurance doesn't pay or won't pay, or you've maxed out your insurance allowance? Great question, Jess.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. But unfortunately, the resources that are available are limited to what the state does offer, and that is your Medicaid, special assistance Medicaid, for instance. That is something that kind of helps fill the gap. But again, there are income limits when it comes to that. Everybody doesn't qualify for your special assistance Medicaid, so unfortunately, they're not. We're in you have kids when kids go off to college, you have grants and things like that. There are not a lot of grants that are laying around for health care and the needs of people when they're in need of care and don't have those means to make sure that they are able to be cared for. So we have what is offered, and that is Medicaid, Medicare, but again, it's based on income solely. That's why people are encouraged to kind of try to save for it, to look at when you can't afford it, to look at your your insurance, your insurance for care, once you're able in need of something, whether it is short term, long term care insurance, when you're in these facilities, to look at plans like that, because there are limits as far as what is out there and available for our health care. So unfortunately, it's limited to what the state has. But of course, Medicaid, that is limited to individuals who are of the lower income bracket and who don't have a lot of assets. And so in many cases, people are over the income for that.
So again, another emotional response. So you work hard all your life, right? You buy a house, you pay it off, and then life happens, a challenge happens that you don't foresee coming, and then in order for me to get the care that I need, my option, if I sell my house, then I have to take all of the assets made on my home to take care of myself, and then when those are done, if I no longer qualify for a nursing home and have to go to assisted living, I'm right back where I started. I hold that we have a healthcare crisis with our
Yeah, absolutely
with our
do.
aging community.
We do.
I agree. I agree 100%. And it's kind of like it takes the breath out of you when you think about it, because you're like, here I am at a big old age and I should have been saving more. And these children better take care of me. And it's then we have those of us that have parents that we still have to, okay, you got to give up. You got to talk them into relinquishing some responsibility a little bit. But at the end of the day, yes, there is a healthcare crisis. The first thing they ask as soon as you get ready to go, they don't want to know much of anything, but do you have insurance? What type of insurance do you have? Do you have insurance? I'm like, she's dying, save her, you know what I'm saying? So I tell you, it's great old US of A, but we're blessed to be here. And if you are just tuning in, we thank you for tuning in to Candid Conversations. Our guest Tameka Douglas is here, and she's sharing a wealth of information that is going to help us, is helping us, and we thank you again, Tameka, for being here. Marcia says she absolutely agrees. We thank you for being here. We thank you for sharing. Ladies, gentlemen, if you're just tuning in, you would want to see this, listen to this, share it, listen to it later. Let us know you heard it, because this is some great information. It's information that we all need to know. And I wish I'd have known maybe about 25 years later. I'm sorry, 25 years earlier. I caught a message. Stephanie says, yes, an elder care health crisis on the senior population. Lord help. And Miss Stepmo is taking care of two parents who are aging. And I can imagine, sometimes with one, but Stephanie, you are to be applauded, because she is heavily on. And I tell you, sometimes people say, it's hard when you're definitely not living in the same community. She drives like over an hour, 2 hours to be there for both of her parents, and and she has siblings. So siblings, it is important that we work together, because earlier in the show, Tameka said it, teamwork makes the dream work. So I would that we had good siblings who would join in and help assist take care of our loved ones once they get to that age. But if you don't, and if they don't, she said, I'm living a nightmare. Listen, we're praying for you. We are praying for you, Stephanie. But that is a lot. And when you see people like that, you lend them a helping hand, y'all. Because sometimes you may be that person one day. We don't know. We really don't know. Jessica said, what can we do to advocate for change? Great question.
Yes,
Great
it
question.
is. And I hold that we've got to continue to pay attention to how we're voting. When you think about these individuals that are making decisions on our behalf daily, looking at what they're for, looking at the policies. What is your policies? What kind of things do you stand for as it relates to? And one of the things, and I know that expansion, because I'm glad about the Medicaid expansion. It has helped some people, but unfortunately, like for instance, there were so many people that really stood for Medicaid being expanded. But unfortunately, even with that, it only helped those ages 19 to 64. So in my world, a lot of our, the individuals that we serve, they unfortunately we're still at square one, where they don't even benefit from it. So yes, it's a blessing to that 20-year-old adult that now gets it because of the expansion, but we need it for those older adults that
Right.
so in that expansion, for instance, so many people lobbied for that and went to Congress on that, and it did get expanded, but it only benefits those who are 19 to 64. So it's not helping our older adults. But in saying that, to answer your question, Jessica, it's again looking at the policy that individuals stand for as we're voting, speaking up as much as we can, for the elderly. One lady, my goodness, she's so dear to me. She lives in the Maryland area, and she was like, I am going to, her mom passed away, and she saw just the deficits as it related uh, to the resources and the benefits that are available for those who worked so hard, who had established careers, who paid off their cars and their houses and stuff. And she saw the limited resources that were available, and she said, I cannot wait. So she said, in fact, she said she was going to get a townhouse near downtown DC so she could lobby and so she could stand, for these elder benefits and stuff like that. And then she ended up getting sick inevitably. But even in her case, doing things like that, finding out when you hear about conversations that are taking place for our elderly population, when you hear about conversations that are taking place as it relates to rules concerning Medicaid and income limits and things of that nature, being able to be informed about it and voting the right way, I would say, as it relates to benefits that we, those of us who may not be millionaires are in a certain income bracket, benefits that we may one day need or our loved ones need, being informed about that kind of stuff is the way I would say is the best way to try to advocate in that regard.
Hmm. Wow, that's great information. We appreciate that. And once again, y'all, if you've missed it, we've been talking about becoming the POA, guardianship, any of those things. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. We'll do our best to get an answer from Tameka. And if we can't, we'll ask Chat GPT. We appreciate you all for tuning in. And again, this conversation has been amazing. Marcy says, this is us in a few years. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I tell you what, it behooves us to go ahead and start now because we're blessed to have this conversation right now and to know this information right now because so many people have left here and didn't have that information and left nothing for their children. And to have to leave and be ill prepared is one thing, but to know about it before you go and do nothing, that's something different. So even as of today, there is something we can do. We can go and just stop for a minute, take a couple of, get your insurance policies together. Let somebody know where they are. If they're under the bed mattress, where are they? Because these things are happening every day. Stephanie says, correct. I have been advocating for a change for more than 10 years. I saw the dilemma arriving on my doorstep years earlier and started the advocacy process. Well, thank you, Stephanie. Step move. We appreciate that. And again, she's living that life. She's living what we are talking about right now, where you have two parents. Two. We know one can barely afford, healthcare and assisted living and skilled living and independent. Let's talk about independent living. There is another place that your elderly parents go, and it's called independent living. So it's a step up. It's not a nursing home, but it's an independent living. So you go into a facility where they have age 55 and plus. 55 and over, and you live in your own apartment. You have all these amenities in there. They cook for you twice a day. You have an area where you can come and lobby, and a restaurant. You have servers. This is independent living, y'all. But Medicaid will not pay for it. I get so many people asking, because that's where we're based out of. They say, does Medicaid cover any of that? Not 5%, not no percent, nothing. That's out of pocket altogether. So we're talking about 3,000 and upward. upward
Yes,
3,000 plus
easily.
for that.
Mhm.
And that's with no health, no nothing, no, when nobody's coming to remind you to take a pill, nobody's helping you into the bathroom, nothing. But you're independent. We'll call you independent because you can live by yourself, but you need to be in a community where elderly people are there because just in case something happens to mom, somebody may see that or, and she falls, somebody may come to her rescue because she's with 150 other people. It's independent living. There is no Medicaid. There is no assistance for that. That is straight out of pocket.
Mhm.
And a lot of times SSI is not covering it for people. So it behooves us, like we've been talking about, start early, plan ahead. Thank God for some husbands and wives that were military because that helped these people later in life. I see some people where their spouses left them well to do and they can afford to live in the biggest apartment in an independent living facility and pay upward $5,000-6,000 just an apartment, no medical care, no health care. But mom's getting dementia now. Mom's getting forgetful now. Now you got to bring in somebody, a home health care aide or something, or company to help that. So on top of that $5,000, you might need to put out another $2,500 just for mom to stay in independent living because mom's like, I don't want to go to a nursing home. I'm not old, I don't want to smell. So listen, we have some decisions and some choices and some things we need to be preparing for, ladies and gentlemen. And it just that's why I wanted to have this conversation. Anything else in the comments? Anybody have any questions? Anything that we forgot? Because I know we were talking about a lot of stuff today.
You
Yeah,
made a great point about the insurance, and talking about where it's located. I've heard of situations where people, someone passed away, and nobody could find the insurance policy. Just things where in a conversation could have taken place early on.
Yes.
Because what is somebody going to do with your insurance policy? I mean, they're not going to kill you because you're the beneficiary, because they're the beneficiary. Just talk about where's that policy at in case something happens. A lot of times people know to call your job in hopes that you have insurance with your job, but sometimes people have paid on a policy for 20 years with an outside agent. And so talking about where those policies are so that people aren't grieving your death and trying to figure out how they're going to put you in the ground. So talk about where those insurance policies are, because that's a terrible feeling to know that it's there and you can't find it. You looked under the bed mattress, it's not there. So where is it? And so
right.
those conversations, where's the insurance policy at? If something were to happen, we're not saying it's going to happen, but if something happens, where do we locate that? And so I think, like Marcy had said in the comments, it is a great conversation to have about the various types of insurance, whole versus term insurance. A lot of people don't know the differences in the two. Just all kinds of conversations about insurance. It is a necessary conversation. Absolutely.
Very necessary. And we've had people on talking about it, and we're going to have some more coming back again that's ready to talk about it, because long term and whole are two. I'm sorry, I'm reading the screen. Whole life and term, totally different things, y'all. Term is for a term of time. If you've been paying on it since you were 25 and you're now 75, pretty much that's probably not even there unless you had a 50-year policy, which you probably didn't. So we really need to look back into that and make sure that, now, of course, whole is going to be a little higher, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to let the professionals come and talk about that, because it's definitely something that we must talk about.
And I do want to leave this website. I just believe when you present information, should leave people with something where there's a book you're referencing or whatever the case may be, because there's so much to learn about Medicaid planning and long-term care needs and things of that nature. So there's a great website that will tell you everything you need to know for the most part about that look back period, as well as Medicaid and things of that nature. And it's simply www.medicaidplanningassistance.org. medicaidplanningassistance.org.
Great.
And it'll give you a plethora of information about that.
That's awesome, because we're going to definitely put that in the comments section. And Stephanie said we must embrace that death is a part of life and we have to talk about it. Yeah. And that's what we do here on Candid Conversations. We talk about it. We talk about the stuff that people don't be talking about. So we're here for you, Stephanie, and we are praying for you. But yes, thank you to me for sharing that information. Thank you got anything?
No, other than thank you so much. And y'all, excuse my emotional outburst. Again, when you think about, you've worked hard all your life, you're trying to do everything you know to do to plan for the future, and life starts lifing. It's hard to plan for that. So again, we just wanted to submit some things to you so that you know what your options are, so that you can try to plan accordingly.
Yeah. And I don't have any stock in this, but check out LegalZoom. I think we heard somebody mention that in the comments, or JT, somebody mentioned it, but I know Marcy has talked about it to me before. And that's something good to look into. It's very affordable in most cases, and it will help you with some of this information and make it go in those wheels. Just like we said, things that are inevitable, things are definitely going to be to come, and we just want to be prepared. Just be prepared. Girls, I tell you what, before I gotta take a left curve just for a hot second, because what's going on with P. Diddy? I wanted to call P. Diddy.
Well, I think it was almost a year ago. The question that you asked that we never got that T-shirt on was, did he do it?
Did
And
he
we
do
were like,
it?
he did it.
He did it.
He
It was
did
a
it.
year ago, and here we are today. So as we curve and end this show, y'all, I don't know if y'all been hearing about it. I don't know, but I tell you what, he did. He got some things going on. I've never heard some of these things. Today I read somewhere that they said Prince was in court. Prince, rest in peace. I think he made a video or something, and they said it was presented. I wasn't there. I'm just telling you what's in the social media streets. Ooh, child, a mess. But I think he did it, JT.
Yeah. So 50 Cent is now selling the free Diddy T-shirts. I think he's
I
going to
saw
sell
that.
out of those, because it's the sarcasm there.
Yes.
But the government is trying to. The reason the federal government got involved was because they said that this was a racketeering or a RICO case, and and I know that this is going to be a 7 or 8 week trial, and we are like into week 1. But what I'm hearing thus far is not sounding like racketeering. It is sounding more like domestic violence. So I think he's going to sit down and do some time, but I don't know right now, based on what I'm hearing, if it's going to be that kind of time, because it's just sounding more like domestic violence and not racketeering or a RICO case. It's all
Right.
deplorable. I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying, when I look at what his high profile Johnny OJ Simpson like defense team is doing thus far, they are definitely planning a lot of reasonable doubt.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Marcy says, years ago, Prince called it. He made a whole video and said, if anything happens to me, look into BD. Eh, listen, we
Mhm.
just report the news. We don't make it. We don't
Right.
know. But this is going to be interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Tameka, thank you again for joining
Yes.
us. We
Thank you,
appreciate you. You
ladies.
all that tuned in at 6 o'clock, thank you, because we got
Yeah.
a new time. So we appreciate you all for taking time and being here. JT, thank you so much for your sacrifice on today. You
Yes.
all tune in next week for another Candid Conversation right here on Oak 93.5 or Facebook Live. Bye, y'all.
Bye bye.
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 Have a good night.